ex-wife is now dying. How to be there for my adult son despite being bitter. At the conclusion of our marriage, my ex-wife had relationships with 3 men at the same time. She was a manager who had to dismiss someone. That someone retaliated by calling me to inform me about one person. She was meeting him on her lunch break, which, after a little of trickle truth, revealed there were 3 men. She then spent a few hours, both face-to-face and over the phone, comparing me to one of the males she was seeing. This is in addition to the physical and mental violence she endured throughout her marriage. To verify the physical abuse, I have a scar and multiple medical expenses. She also treats our kid with contempt. She is enraged by the fact that he is. I'm incredibly resentful of her. She has been diagnosed with a very dangerous cancer and wants to speak to me on the phone many years after the divorce, while she is with a 4th guy. She relocated a few hours away. She's probably just got 60 or 90 days left. But I have to be there for our grown-up son? I have to confess that I thought to myself, it couldn't happen to a nicer person. It's a horrible thought to have, yet it won't go away. I hate that I'm such a jerk for thinking this. I'm disgusted with myself and battling with it while wanting to be present for our baby. I'm a horrible, terrible person for having this thinking, yet it won't go away. I'm sick about myself because of this, and I don't deserve his love. But I have to be there for him. I despise myself. He deserves a better guy as a father. What should I do to get rid of this thought? How can I stop being so repulsive? How can I be there for my kid while being such a bad person with such a bad thought? Should I contact her via phone as she requested? Should I tell her she is forgiven, presuming that is what she wants to discuss? She isn't, but I can pass for her. Story 2. Pro-divorce. All of this occurred to me a few years ago. I informed a friend about my divorce, and she encouraged me to tell others. It began a few years ago. I assumed we were content. We were the stereotypical suburban professional couple. Financially stable, healthy, with a nice life and 2 children, 14F and 9M at the time. We seemed to have a good social life, in my opinion. We were going through one of those usual married couple snags. We were both working long hours and not spending enough time together. We were dealing with developmental issues with my kid, and tensions in the family were running a bit high. I noticed she was spending a lot more time messaging with her girlfriends on her phone. I didn't give it much thought. I began making a much more concentrated effort to get out of work when I could, assist around the home, and be more emotionally present, but the chasm widened over the course of a few weeks. When I powered up an old iPad for my kid to use, I ended up uncovering some texts by mistake. Her FB Messenger was still logged in, and there were a number of really dubious communications with a man from her hometown named Jim Bobcooter, or JBC for short. The messages weren't wholly improper, but based on the timing and context of the communications, I could tell there were quite a few missing. I made a mental note to keep an eye on this and proceeded to attempt to mend things. The following day, after I took the day off to do some tasks I thought would make her happy and left her some beautiful notes telling her how much I admired her, she was back in the living room corner texting her buddies. I brought the boys' iPad to the office, opened FB Message, and watched my wife tear me down in real time. Her and JBC were mocking me. All of my shortcomings, fears, and secrets that I had confided in my spouse had become fodder for her and JBC. Not only that, but there was an undertone to the whole chat, particularly when she was criticizing my performance in the sack. I was able to snap some screenshots, but I missed a lot of the text since she was erasing them as the discussion progressed. I wasn't emotionally prepared to approach her. I waited in the office until she fell asleep and then had a few beers. The following day, I went off and spent some time soul-searching, drinking, and trying to figure out what to do. When my wife arrived home and inquired as to what was wrong, I just coped and told her I had a hard day. I was watching the iPad as the train catastrophe continued to unfold a few minutes later. So started a few weeks of screenshotting, drinking, and distancing myself from the connection. I knew there was no turning back now. The communications had become obviously, with my wife fully engaged, and JBC was tossing in I love yous. I hired a lawyer, learned my choices, and began pushing ahead. Everything seemed very strange at this point. Watching the messages, I discovered that JBC was coming to town to spend a weekend with my wife at a good hotel. I was missing a lot of information. They must have discussed it over the phone at some point, but I was able to infer enough to obtain the when and where. The following day, the wife is buttering me up and wants to go on a spa weekend with the girlfriends to unwind so that when she returns, we can truly concentrate on our marriage. I'm with it the whole time. It's the most brilliant idea she's ever had, and I'll go to any length to get us back on track. I consult with a lawyer and have him create a robust separation agreement indicating that she would move out, have weekend visitation, and no child support until the divorce is finalized. Then comes the most excruciating 2 weeks of my life. After all of this, most of my emotions for her have vanished and I'm filled with rage like I've never felt before. D-Day has arrived. I'm taking the day off from work. I withdraw half of the money in any joint accounts we have, leaving her half alone. My paycheck had already been sent to a different bank. I terminate our money market account, get a cashier's check for her share, and deposit it in my new account. I go to Office Max and print off around 75 pages of Facebook Messenger screenshots to pass the time since I don't want to stay at home. She messages me saying she's leaving and that she loves me. I advise her to enjoy herself. I arrive at the hotel about 8:30 a.m. and dial the wife's phone number from the lobby. It is sent directly to VM. They're probably already doing that, whatever the case may be. I approach the front desk and ask if I may use the phone to call JBC room. He answers the phone after 3 rings. JBC, how are you? JBC, could you kindly send my wife down to the lobby? JBC, I'm not sure what you're on about, man. Okay then. I suppose I'll have to phone Mrs. JBC and get her to come down here. It's all a ruse. I knew he was married and her first name, but that was about it. JBC, inaudible, shuffling, panic, you have 5 minutes. Click. Not even 2 minutes later, my wife emerges from the elevator, looking agitated. I take her to a seat in the lobby's far corner. Her starts spouting nonsense about it not being what it seems to be and so on. I'm not here to debate. What's going on is what's written in this stack of papers. The only way I won't provide a copy of this to your daughter, your parents, and send it to everyone we know is if you leave right now. Wife was quite proud. Daughter was in the midst of a turbulent adolescence, and her knowledge would very certainly have ended their relationship. Her wife was also her parents' golden child, and she was always concerned about what they thought of her. I didn't have much clout and humiliation was my only weapon. Her professional existence is also structured on her image, which I knew she would preserve at all costs. Her sniffle, mutter, unintelligible me. This is a check for half of the balance in the money market account. I've taken my part of the money out of all the other joint accounts. You should have more than enough to live on. She begins to sob a bit. I could practically feel the many ideas and emotions coursing through her mind. But now was the moment to keep pushing. Me. Here's a separation agreement that I believe is more than fair given the circumstances. I'll need you to review this, sign it, and leave it at the home when you receive your belongings. Do you wish to have a look at these screenshots? No, she says. Me. Okay. Have some fun with JBC. If you don't come back to the home, I'll email this, holds up ream of screenshots, to everyone. I rush out of the foyer and I can hear her having a nervous breakdown. I get in my vehicle and drive off to a parking lot, where I have my own weeping fury tantrum. Normally, I would have sobbed and shouted in front of her, but I managed to keep it together long enough to pull it off. I have no idea what she did that evening or during the weekend. She texted and phoned often wanting to chat. I just hung off the phone, and by Monday afternoon, movers had her belongings and she had delivered the agreement. I let her have a conversation with the kids, essentially telling them that mommy and daddy need some time apart, that we still love them, and so on. Standard divorce jargon. After a week, she wants to have her first serious conversation. I oblige her since I already have my stuff together and know what I want, but I should listen to her out. She's really sorry. She wishes for a second chance. She wants to reclaim her family. She'll go to any length. She's on her knees in my lap sobbing. I have no intention of ever reclaiming her. I tell her she must arrange marital counseling on her own at a time convenient for me. I tell her that I can't live with her, but that she should spend time with the kids in order to keep a connection with them. So our new normal consists of her coming over to the home, preparing and eating supper with the kids 3 times a week. She always spared me a plate. I made myself scarce, cleaning the house and doing the kids' laundry, and then returning to her apartment. We went to therapy. It consisted of her working through her problems with the therapist to discover out why she did it, her pleading for forgiveness, and me playing the victim stoically. I wasn't going to give her a second opportunity. All I wanted to do was pass the time, establish myself as the major caretaker for the children, and establish her as not having residence in the home. I see my own therapist after a few months and am diagnosed with depression and PTSD. I ask my boss if I may work part-time for the foreseeable future to deal with personal concerns, and he says it's no great deal. After 6 months of treatment, I told her that I couldn't forgive her and that I wanted an amicable divorce, but she was still the love of my life, and maybe someday we might try again. She was heartbroken, but she consented to the divorce provided I vowed to try again someday. I wanted the kids to want to remain with me after the divorce was finalized. I left a Google search for how to endure your wife's infidelity open on the shared PC at home, and I left some printed out infidelity articles in the kitchen that weren't so concealed. My daughter discovered them and came to me in tears. I told her she wasn't intended to discover them, that her mother had made a mistake, that her mother still loved her, and that I would always be there for her. My daughter, who used to hold my wife in such high respect, would no longer speak to her without yelling, which destroyed her. When the court required statements from the kids a few months later, tiny brother followed big sister's example, and both wanted to remain with dad in the home they grew up in. I acquired the home when the divorce was completed. I had to buy out part of her equity, but that's okay. I was granted primary custody of the children. Because of the disparity in our salaries as a result of my part-time employment, I was granted hefty child support. Now, for the past 2 years, I've been able to live in the home with my kids, work part-time, get the Now ex to subsidize it for me, and when she takes the kids on weekends, I've been able to have my fun with Tinderellas and some FWB I've developed. In the perspective of my children, I am the patron saint of fatherhood because I always take the high road and am always there. In my ex's view, I'm the one who vowed away, the one she'll always ache for, and I get the added benefit of having her come over for whenever I want it by dangling the carrot of perhaps getting back together. That, however, is not going to happen.